we are rolling through what is certainly a abnormal show. No sports at all last night. And in the meantime, there are election results coming in, and it has been an unbelievably wild turn of events over the past, 12 hours, basically, since all of the election results started to arrive. Let me give you the latest if you're just waking up with us right now. Overnight, Joe Biden took a lead in Wisconsin. His lead in Wisconsin right now, as we are approaching, 7 a.m. on the East Coast, is right now around 8,000 votes. He is up 0.2% out of all of the votes that have been counted so far in Wisconsin, with 89% of the vote in. Trump is holding on to an incredibly narrow 1.3% lead in Michigan, with 84% of the vote in. Biden's up 5 in Arizona. Trump remains up 11 in Pennsylvania. So, what is the overall scenario that we find ourselves in right now? Trump needs to hang on to North Carolina, where he is up 1.4% with 95% of the vote in. He needs to hang on to Georgia, where he's up 2 with 92% of the vote in. And he has to hold on to Michigan and Pennsylvania, or flip back Wisconsin or Arizona from Joe Biden in order to be elected president of the United States. Right now, if you look at the odds markets, Dub, what is the latest odds market? Not that the odds markets have been particularly reliable right now, but Biden has now become the favorite to be elected the president of the United States, and he is back in the mix, where basically he began the election before turning into a huge underdog. Now he is back as a favorite.
Yeah, that's right. Right as we speak right now, he's about a minus 210 to minus 220 favorite. So that's, almost about a 70% clip there of Joe Biden being the favorite.
And Trump got up to basically like an 85% favorite at some point prior to all of this being over. So what did we learn? First of all, a lot of people asking, when is this going to be resolved, right? When are we going to actually know who won the presidency? And the answer is no one really knows for sure, but there will probably be some form of resolution likely to emerge during the course of today, I would think. This reminds me a lot of 2000, when we had a 37-day wait, for those of you who are old enough to remember it, before George W. Bush won in the race that he ran against Al Gore. It reminds me very much of what happened in 2000, but we have multiple Floridas instead of just one state, and maybe it still will end up coming down to one state. But right now we have a bunch of different states that are in the mix. Courts may get involved before all is said or done. Also, there is right now at least, and again, I say right now because there's been so much movement, it appears that Republicans may hold the Senate. Why would that matter? Well, if Republicans hold the Senate, then it means that probably there wouldn't be very much that could be done by Joe Biden, because he would have to pass whatever legislation he wanted to get done through a Republican-controlled Senate. I don't think Joe Biden's going to run again if he wins this election. And so by 2022, which is when we would have the midterms, many people would already be starting to look ahead towards who would be the presumptive candidates running to be elected president in 2024. So one of the interesting things about any presidential election is, as soon as there's a resolution, everybody starts to look towards 2024. That's even more the case where if Trump were to find a way to win, he would be term limited out. If Biden wins, there's no way, I don't believe, that 82-year-old Joe Biden is going to run for another term. And so we would have no incumbent in 2024 regardless, which means, guess what? We got more of this in 4 years. In the meantime, maybe the temperature gets dialed back down. Hopefully we can get past COVID. Hopefully. hopefully people just get back to some form more of normalcy, because whatever side of the equation you are on, this election did not deliver some sort of definitive statement about the direction the country wants to go. If anything, it's going to come down, just like the 2016 election did, to a few thousand voters in Big Ten states and what decisions they made about who should be the president. Trump won Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin by a total of 77,000 votes in 2016. Joe Biden might end up winning those states by even less numbers than Trump did. Yes, he may flip it. We'll see. He's now the favorite to be the president, but that is the absolute latest as we are working through giving you the most updated data. One bit of sports news connected to the overall election: former Auburn football coach Tommy Tuberville, as well as a former Ole Miss coach, has been elected to the United States Senate from Alabama. So the state of Alabama elects an Auburn football coach who beat them 6 straight times to represent them in the United States Senate. That is so far the lone Republican pickup in the Senate. There is a close race going on in Michigan in the Senate as well. We'll see what ends up happening there as the final 10% of the vote in Michigan comes in. Both the Senate and the presidency may be decided by those final 10% of the vote. I should say the final 15%. The numbers that I'm looking at right now says that 84% of the vote in Michigan is in right now, with Trump holding on to a 1.2 percentage point lead, a tiny one, as it were, as all of these different votes begin to come in the Midwest. We opened up phone lines 877-996-6369. Anybody else in the crew have any other questions that you want to ask or any other statements that you want to put out there? Anybody got anything? Going once?
I think.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Danny G. Well, I was just going to say, with all this technology we have today, and especially in a year like this with a huge number of mail-in ballots and absentee ballots, it seems like there should be an easier way to figure out an expected number of those ballots that we could be expecting. Does that question make sense? Like,
I don't know exactly how we know what the total number of votes that are going to be cast when there's absentees and everything else. I really don't know how all this is tabulated. But I think it's fair to say that, paper ballots probably don't make a ton of sense in the technologically. Now, what they do make sense of is if you have a paper ballot, you at least have a record of the vote being made. Whereas if you just have electronic tickets, I don't even know how that works. Like I voted on an electronic touchscreen with like a pen that I used, meaning like a pen that you write with, a stylus they called it, to like punch in exactly what my votes were. And then they printed me off a little slip, and then I had to walk to a different part of the election area and put that little slip of paper through. So that in and of itself, I'm assuming, is about preserving a paper record. But I'm not enough of an expert. It's a great question. I'm not enough of an expert in election law to know the answer to that. I did take, I don't want to Holiday Inn Express this, but during my legal studies when I was in law school at Vanderbilt, I did take a course on election law, which was actually really fascinating, but it's been 20 years, and frankly, I remember almost nothing of it. So if the vote stays as close as it is, there could be some different lawsuits that are filed, and certainly big winners, as always, are going to be election lawyers who stand to make a great deal of money litigating this process out. What about you, Danny G?
There was talk going into the election about disinformation on social media. Were you on Twitter last night? How do you think
I thought it held up fairly well. Now, I don't know what Twitter was keeping me from seeing.
Yeah.
And it's possible that there was actually some things that I would have enjoyed seeing that I wasn't allowed to see. But I didn't think that by and large people were completely out of their minds on social media.
Only on Facebook.
Oh, I don't even, but I also don't read mentions.
Yeah.
So I just read the people that I follow. So I'm sure, the battles in the trenches of everybody's mentions were absolutely brutal last night. And I bet you're right about Facebook and the way that everybody reacts there. But in general, I didn't think it was that bad. I didn't see a ton of people. Did you guys kind of keep tabs on anybody who lost their minds on social media? Like, were there any people in sports media who completely like
Jamel Hill?
Yeah, like I'm going to read her tweet. But was there anybody else as bad as her?
I don't
No,
think
that's
so.
the only one I saw.
Yeah, Jamel Hill tweeted, if Trump wins re-election, it's on white people, no one else. I mean, she really is the worst, right? I mean, just the fact that she makes money. It would be one thing if she owned her own business, but the fact that media companies pay her, if she says anything other than criticizing white people there, it's considered insanely racist. And my thing in general, let me just say this. I'm encouraged by the fact that Trump got more voters who were Hispanic and more voters who were black in 2020 than he did in 2016, because what that reflects to me is all these constant arguments, oh, that's racist or whatever. I'm so over cancel culture and the idea that what somebody, that everybody's racist and everybody's sexist and everybody's I like the whole political correctness universe, to me, is just fundamentally the worst thing about America right now. And social media makes that worse than anywhere. And I think that's not just true, certainly for political opinions, but like, does anybody think it makes sense that we have people going back through 14 and 15-year-old athletes' tweets and trying to get them in trouble for things that they sent when they were teenagers? I mean, I don't think there's a parent out there on the planet who's like, yeah, that makes sense to me, right? You have to have conversations with your teenage kids. I've got a 12-year-old who's going to be a teenager in January. And I do think you have to have conversations with your kids about being smart on social media. But the standard for what smart on social media means for a 14 or 15-year-old is a lot different than what it might be for a 24 or 34 or 44-year-old. So every kid does dumb things when they're teenagers. I don't know why we would hold them completely accountable for everything they do. I mean, we don't even put people in prison. This is my big analogy. We don't even put people in prison oftentimes for crimes that they commit before they're 18 years old. Yet we're going to hold people completely accountable for what they say on Twitter when they're minors. I mean, it's crazy to me. The other thing I would say is this, and we'll get to your calls here in a moment, 877-996-6369. I do think it's worth sitting down with your kids if they're young, and there's going to be a lot of noise, and they may hear adults who are angry about the election, or they may hear grandma or grandpa or somebody else's parent. I think it's important to let your kids know, especially right now when this has been such a chaotic year already, the country's going to be fine. I know that people get all worked up and they're like, oh, if my side doesn't win, the country's never going to be the same again. Trust me, we're going to be fine. We're going to be having the same election in 2024. Your kids are going to be fine. We had an election in the middle of the Civil War. We had an election in the middle of World War II. We can handle an election during a pandemic that might be extremely close like this one, and the country is going to be fine. So I think there are a lot of little kids out there. They may be going to school right now. They may be sitting in your car with you, whether you are a Republican or a Democrat, whether you don't care about politics at all. I do think there's a great deal of apprehension among kids because they see these television commercials that convince them that the world is going to come to an end if one side wins or the other side wins. And one thing that I combat and have been combating and will, I think, frankly, be combating for the rest of my life is this idea of selling fear. And I think we are, as a country, incredibly fearful. And I certainly think that fear translates down, like many other things, it runs down from adults to children. And I think there are a lot of kids who may not be able to be in school, who have COVID going on right now. Mom and dad may not have a good job. Mom and dad may be fighting more than they used to. Mom may not be in the house. Dad may not be in the house. Grandma or grandpa may be super more stressed. And there are a lot of kids who listen to this radio program. And one reason I've tried to avoid a lot of times cursing on any of my programs is because I know there are a lot of kids sometimes listening in the car now. And as I become a parent, I think about that more. And I think it's just important to let kids, so if your kids are listening right now, it's going to be fine. The country is going to be fine. It may be ugly for a few days or maybe even a few weeks. It may be messy. There may be a lot of mean things said back and forth. But ultimately, the great thing about the United States is we are durable. Our democracy finds a way, whether in 2000, when we had a 37-day wait to see who was going to win that election in Florida, or maybe we're going to repeat that to some extent now. I know that everybody running around on social media constantly acts like their hair is on fire and everything is always the next great massive scandal, and fear is just emanating from everywhere right now. We're going to be fine. We really are. And I'm very confident of that, regardless of what your perspective is. So I also think if you're super, super nervous, there's a good chance, like I said, that Republicans are going to win the Senate, which means we're going to have divided government, which means for the next 2 years, there's not going to be some sort of wild undertaking that's going to fundamentally alter what the country is doing now. I think that's an important data point to put out there. Now, things could change, but that is the latest data right now.